up, guys and gals? My name is Chris Tondevold, and you're listening to Ambition Radio. This is a podcast where we interview cool people doing cool stuff, trying to figure out what makes them tick, what keeps them motivated, what keeps them going, and being able to balance their life, their career, their family with the pursuit of their passions, their hobbies, the whole nine in there. So this week we have the band Brothers Creeper. This is a really, really fun band. One of my favorite local bands in the Southern Maryland area. A lot of fun to watch. Just goofball punk rock, horror punk, spooky punk, I guess you could call it. Really, really great interview. The drummer / singer, JR, we go through the band itself, but also his paper that he wrote on hardcore and the history of hardcore, and then also his poetry, which was really great. Definitely check all that stuff out. I'll be able to put a whole bunch of links into the description of the show to make sure that you're able to check all that out. Brothers Creeper just released a split EP with the other local Southern Maryland band, Moldier. Great EP, 4 songs, I think 2 from each. Really able to put it all together, and it was really, really good EP. JR also released his own solo project called Jimmy Dread. All of that, like I said, I'll go ahead and put that in the show notes. All the links, Bandcamp, Spotify, all that good stuff is on there. So without further ado, let's get to the episode. Thank you, everyone, so far that has listened, that has checked it out, that has given me feedback. I really appreciate it. Rate, review, all that good stuff on iTunes. Let me know what you think. Let me know if there's anybody else that you'd like me to interview. And then enjoy. Thanks. The first thing that I want to kind of bring up is where pretty much all 3 of you met and how that worked out. Because with Brothers Creeper, you've been doing... You have like 4 EPs out, maybe?
I think
3.
We just did our 3rd one.
It's 3, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did this band come to be?
Okay, so the origin of the trio is that we all met in high school when we were freshmen. So we've known each other since we were 14. Devin and I met freshman orientation. We've been best friends since then.
Yep.
And then we met Naomi shortly thereafter, and we were in jazz band all through high school. And then Devin and I were in a band together in high school called the Saturday Night Frights. So the horror punk thing goes back a while. And then the band split at the end of high school. And then we just kind of did our own thing for like a number of years. And then in 2016, I was finishing up my senior thesis on hardcore and straight edge. And, you know, spending a year listening to hardcore and reading zines and stuff, I was like, I got to start another band again. I got to start another punk band. And so I immediately hit up Devin and was like, let's just start something. Let's just start writing some songs and let's just, you know, see what happens. Maybe we'll like cut some records in our garage or something. I really didn't think anything would come of it. And so we literally wrote like the first EP in like maybe 2 or 3 weeks.
Nice.
And and then we cut it like with a friend who had a studio, and then that was Smut. That's the first EP. And we played a few shows that year, and we just had friends fill in on bass because, you know, Devin just wrote all the parts. And it was like really cool. I really didn't think anything too big of it. I thought like, you know, we'll play some shows, we'll get some friends together because
It'll be fun.
yeah, it would be fun just to get people together again because it just felt like everyone was kind of doing their own thing. And
Definitely.
yeah. And so, and then Naomi, she joined the band the spring of last year.
Yeah, I left the state for a couple of years. I moved out, and then I came back, and they asked me to play bass. Because I played bass briefly in jazz band in high school. Bass isn't even really my primary instrument. But they needed a bass player, and they were like, you have a bass? And I was like, I think I can play it. So then I came along, and yeah, that was March, I think, of last year was our first show as a full band, and it was a house show down by St. Mary's College. It was so much fun.
Yeah. Kind of fun.
Okay.
And
Still remember it.
yeah, it was memorable because it was like the first time it felt like an actual band. You know, because before then it was like, we had friends filling in and it was cool and it was fun, it was goofy, but like we had merch at the show and we played a whole set of originals and it was just like oh, this is a band, and here we are now, and we have another EP out, and we played a ton of shows, and we have a bunch of crazy big shows next week. We're opening for the Buttertones next week, and it's an actual band, which is insane. Because honestly, I really thought it would just be like a studio thing. Like I really didn't think that the tools and the people really out there to make it really happen. But what ended up happening is we made it happen. Is kind of how it came about.
Yeah.
I keep telling everybody every time they introduce me to like a new thing we're doing, I was like, this band was not supposed to make it this far. Like, why are we here? Like, we're on freaking Ticketfly with the Buttertones, and I keep texting them. I'm like, we're not supposed to be making it this far. This is not how it was supposed to go down.
Yeah, you have legit tickets with your name on it.
Yeah, it's insane.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm really happy that you guys have made a full band out of it, because this is the most fun that I've had, like, watching a band play in a while.
Thank you.
Yeah, so when I saw you guys live, I was like, this is fantastic, because, A, you're not taking yourself so seriously.
No.
I think that's the most important thing, and it really comes out in your music, because you're just having fun with it, which is fantastic. But I'm really glad that I got to see you guys play live, rather than just listen to the recordings, because the recordings really don't do you guys justice, I don't think. You're out there to have fun and enjoy yourselves, and it's very refreshing when all I go to are like very serious shows, and like this is what they do for a living. Like, stop taking yourself so seriously, have a little bit of fun, cut loose a little bit, and enjoy yourself.
Yep, stop trying to look cool, no one cares. Like, we're out here to have a fun time.
Right. And it's interesting too, to kind of see how the scene has come up in St. Mary's. So you did Saturday Night Frights in what year is that?
That was 2008, 2012.
Okay. So I must have been doing shows down there at that time, but I don't remember booking your band.
No,
I wouldn't be surprised.
But we knew, because you booked a lot of our friends' bands,
Right?
And we just snuck through the cracks somehow.
Okay, because I remember seeing each and maybe not Devin, but definitely.
I didn't. I had different hair back then.
Okay,
You might have seen an Ellen DeGeneres and someone who's looking to speak to the manager. But,
that would have been us.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember seeing obviously Naomi and JR at the shows. So I've never even, like, when I was reading your poetry and stuff like that, I was like, I don't remember this band, and I feel terrible now. But you definitely have, like,
I wouldn't.
well, I feel bad because I should know, but that's funny. But yeah, you definitely have like the full experience of a St. Mary's, because you have the feedback in there. So that's
that's right.
So that's fun. Which I'm amazed that is still a thing that is happening. That people are still, like, he's still doing stuff.
Yeah.
I don't
Oh,
know.
you figured out who I was talking about. Oh, man.
Yeah.
How did you
I have no idea. Dan and I talked about that from My Heart, My Anchor. We talked about just growing up in that scene and having that aspect in there. So that's fun. So when was your first live experience as far as playing out then for the Saturday Night Frights?
It was a Good Sam show.
Yep.
Okay.
It was probably 2010.
Yep. It was, I believe, sometime in winter that year.
Yeah. And we had just been hearing that, like, Good Sam was booking our friends' bands. Like, A False Tomorrow was playing there.
Right.
And Lawless, I think, was playing there.
Yep.
And we were like, oh my gosh, we can play a show that people are putting on. And I remember calling Fred, and I was like really serious, and I was like, hi, Fred Heather, this is J.R. Ryan from Brothers Creeper. I mean, from the Saturday Night Frights. And we're a dedicated band, we're looking to play a show. I was like, oh man, this is the guy. This is the big cheese of St. Mary's County. And he was like, oh yeah, I'll put you on. And we were like, oh, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. This is such a big opportunity.
And you're like, yeah, whatever.
And and that was like our first show. And it was like it was a set that was like, I was playing with a church band as the opening, and then the Saturday Night Frights were playing after that, and it was supposed to be a battle of the bands. And then
Okay.
the rock band run. The Satan won that night is what happened. And it was just crazy. It was like our friends were there and we were playing original music because we had always been playing original music. And it was just like, since then, we've just
It's
been
been
chasing
insane
that.
because
Yeah.
in high school we always kind of kept to ourselves, you
Right.
know, having like kind of like that nervous kind of feel to it. And then as soon as we like played that first show, it kind of like just unleashed some kind of wild animal in us.
Some
And
of
ever
it-
since
yeah.
then, we couldn't get enough.
Yeah, bathed in cheap neon lights and feedback.
And
like,
tight jeans.
swaddles you. Yeah, tight Hot Topic pants.
I feel bad that you
Stunts.
never got to play for me then, because I felt like it was a completely different experience. Like going to my shows and then going to Fred's shows and then going, I think there was another girl that was doing shows, because I was doing them at Room with a Brew for a while.
Oh,
and then,
wow.
Yeah, I was doing them at Good Sam for a while. I think Fred might have been the first one there. I don't remember. But yeah, it was just a night and day difference, I think, between the quality of shows. Like I was,
Oh, yeah?
yeah, mostly because I was trying to do a bunch of different stuff. Like I was bringing bands from like Baltimore and stuff.
Oh,
and,
sick.
Yeah.
Because I booked pianos at Good Sam.
Really?
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, I
my
think I do remember
gosh.
hearing about that. I didn't go
Oh,
to that one.
man, I
though.
did
That's
not know that.
insane. I can't
Yeah,
believe
so
that.
I was trying. It just nothing worked out. So
Man.
that was fun. So that's when you first get the bug for at least playing music,
Yeah.
and really getting it out there. And then so back into 2016, where's the concept for this band come to be? Is it just you guys are dicking around, horror is what you like, and then you don't take yourself seriously at all?
This band is basically like the stepchild of the Saturday Night Frights.
Okay.
Except
Yeah.
we became more experienced as musicians and actually knew what to do. And
Yeah.
being 14-year-old high schoolers who just wanted to have fun. So Saturday Night Frights has a lot to do with Brothers Creeper in ways because we wanted in high school to start a punk horror band. Because we grew up listening to the Misfits and like Oingo Boingo, at least from my side, and having all these crazy little antic kind of things in music you don't hear nowadays. And now we're actually being able to translate it into Brothers Creeper. And this is basically the band we wanted to create, but we just didn't know how to do it.
Right.
I think there's also like, you know, having been away from like a punk band in a while and like having gone out of like the trendy like metalcore like boy band scene, and then, you know, I got really into the hardcore scene and, you know, see those bands and they're very passionate, but it's very serious. And, you know, I went from like serious but like cliche boy band metal to like passionate but just very serious hardcore. And I just remember being like, we need to do something else. Like, and so Brothers Creeper was just like, horror punk is just some kind of a niche for Devin and I. Just like, that's sort of just like the vehicle that is, like, I think it's because punk rock is already like this, like on the fringes, like social criticism, but then like you pair it with like the Twilight Zone, which is like this, you know, horror is like a criticism of society, but it's not like, it's done in a way that makes it kind of on the ether, like you don't, it's
Right.
not totally part of society. So like horror punk is just like way out there and you can really do whatever you want.
Yeah, there's no real limit of what you can do.
Yeah, like you can say you're punk, but you can do like a swing song, or you could do like, you can really do anything because the horror aspect of it, you can be as theatrical as possible. You're not really hemmed in with like, oh, there has to be a breakdown, oh, it has to be an 8-beat rhythm, it has to be 250 BPM, like,
Or it has to be the same drum
Yeah.
sounds, the same
Yeah.
snare, the same everything that
Yeah.
your favorite band is doing. It has to be that. It has to be the 3-piece. It has to be just straight, 3 percussion chords, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Which is really cool about what we do. It's because not every song's the same, and that's what
Yeah.
I love. Is because, for instance, Stain is just a straight up punk song for 58 seconds.
Yeah.
But then we have like songs like Crucifixer Upper and Black Lagoon, or who
What is it? Theremin?
yeah,
I love
Yeah.
that Theremin.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
and
That's
Theremin,
fun.
that have like a Ramon kind of essence or a like 1950s diner kind of song.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I grew up listening to 50s music too, so there's elements of that in all of our songs too. You won't find that in a horror punk kind of category because it's just so different. It's just being different than the norm, and that's what we really wanted to base everything off of, which is really cool. That's what I love about being in this band is I don't have a limit of what I can do.
Yeah.
So if it sounds weird on the guitar, it's probably gonna fit.
I like that. Where did punk come in for you guys' lives then?
It's been there forever.
Always.
Right.
We were straight out the womb.
Yeah, like my dad is a classic rock guy, but he appreciates all music. But when I was 8, I started skating, and I got Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and I write about it in my poem. It's literally like probably the reason I am who I am. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is the Bible of my life. Like it's just like when I put it in and Police Truck by Dead Kennedys came on, I was shocked. And I hear like, I was like, what on earth? And then you hear like Goldfinger's Superman, and I was like, I had never heard ska before. And so I was like, this is amazing. And because I really didn't start playing full drum sets till I was 10. And I remember my middle school band teacher like seeing me and was like, you should listen to ska. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but I didn't know Goldfinger was ska. But skating and punk rock is like hand in hand. And so that's how I heard all of the OG punk bands. And then in high school, when I was able to torrent music, I just got all of the stuff
All kinds of
that I could get. All kinds of viruses and all kinds of music. And probably like had to empty my computer like 50 times. But I had the Misfits, I had the Bad Brains, I had like the Dead Kennedys, I had the Clash, and I just was like, punk has always been just like the most important thing. Like I've always loved punk rock.
That's fun.
Yep. And I mean, for me, I think, God, when I was like 6 or something like that, my aunt for my birthday bought me Dookie by Green Day.
Bless.
That's amazing.
And that was like one of the first.
That should not
Like-
be a 6-year-old's album.
No, it shouldn't. I like when she gave it to me. I had no idea what it was, and then when I listened
Was she
to
just
it,
looking at Dookie and being like, this is what
well,
6-year-olds like?
I came from the
6-year-olds
Like
like
drawings on the
shit.
front.
I came from the same background as James. My parents were heavy into like hair metal and anything dating back from like 1950 onward. They wanted to make sure I was like trained to know these songs. Like they used to like play the oldies radio station and quiz me to make sure I knew who they were. So my aunt was like, oh, well, he's into that whole metal stuff, so let me give him this little cool little CD.
Explosions are metal. Yeah.
So I listened to it, and just like hearing Basket Case or Longview on that album, like that album changed how I
Yeah.
saw music.
Same.
Really, it really did. And then I started seeing Blink 182 and, Misfits originally came around too and all that time. It was just so overwhelming that I was like, this is awesome. I want to
This is
do
the
it.
best stuff.
Yeah, so that's really, I think Dookie is really where it took off for me, because I had no idea what it was, and as soon as I listened to it, I was like hooked immediately.
That's crazy. It's such a generational like story, because you have a video game bringing that to your life, and then you have like your parents bringing that into you. I remember, so my mom raised me on country.
Bless.
Yeah. And then, so I'm listening to Garth Brooks, I'm listening to Alan Jackson, all the old 90s like country artists.
George Strait.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, George,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
George Strait, Billy Ray Cyrus when he was actually a
Oh,
musician.
bless. I don't have my keychain on me.
And then my second stepdad was really into like 80s thrash metal.
Oh,
Nice.
man.
Oh, wow.
So like Flotsam and Jetsam, and then like the
Uh-huh.
first couple Metallica records,
Right.
and then Anthrax and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, this sounds fun, but I don't care. So I decided to go figure out what punk rock was. And the first, so I started listening to that, and then I had a couple of my friends that were all into it, and they would always talk about like Rancid, they would always talk about NoFX and all that shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, cool. Let me pick up this Rancid album, and it's Rancid 2000, which is nothing like anything that they've ever done.
No, I don't even know that record.
Really? Okay.
I know with Out Came the Wolves, and that's like the record I know. By
Okay,
them.
so Rancid 2000 is their like harder, almost grind punk.
Oh man.
It's fast. It's nothing like they've ever done. It's such a weird one-off, but I absolutely loved it because it was just like fast, loud, and everything was abrasive. Everything was, the only thing that cut through was Matt Freeman's bass.
Yeah.
and that was it. All the guitars were just gnarly the entire way through, but all the songs were maybe 1.5 to 2 minutes long at most. And
Awesome.
there was a couple 30-second ones in there.
Nice.
So
Nice.
the whole record must have
It's
been
our
only
forte.
like 15, 16 minutes at least, I think.
That's awesome.
But I listened to that album and I was like, I love this.
Mhm.
Whatever this is, I love. And then started going backwards. And then I
Yeah.
realized that Rancid doesn't sound like any of this.
Yeah.
And they have like ska and punk rock
Oh,
shit.
Yeah.
That was really weird. Because you have Tom Armstrong?
I think it's Tim. Yeah, it's Tim.
Just screaming, and then Lars Fredrickson just screaming the entire time.
Mhm.
So it was nuts. But yeah, I go in and I talk to all my other friends, and they're like, "Yeah, that album sucks. This is not what you should be listening to. Like, you should be listening to Out Comes the Wolves. You should
Yeah.
be listening to Let's Go. You should be listening to all the other stuff." And then I finally listened to Black Lung, and I was like, "This is everything all in
Yeah.
one." So that was fantastic.
Mhm.
But I went back to like the old stuff because I'm raised on the country and the metal, and then like 60s music and the Doors and all that shit.
I
That's,
love the Doors so much.
Doors are really good.
yeah, so that I'll tell you a story about that in a second.
Mhm.
But I started listening to the first wave punk, so 77, Buzzcocks,
Go for it. Yeah.
Nice.
The Damned,
Mm-hmm.
that style, and I never paid attention to like the Ramones. They were fine, but
Mhm.
I was always like very first wave, and then built up from there.
Right.
So it was amazing to be able to kind of like rebel against what my parents were doing, and kind of even what my friends were doing, because my friends were listening to that 90s punk, and I
Right.
was like, "You guys are lame. I'm gonna go listen to the first style."
Yeah. Right. Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, my first introduction to the Doors is Jim Morrison biography.
Which one?
No One Gets Out of Here Alive.
I just read that one like maybe a month or so ago, like a few months ago.
It's
So good.
amazing.
Insane.
And it has some of his poetry in there,
Mm-hmm.
intertwined in there. But that was so my stepdad gave me that book, and he was like, "Here, you need to read this."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Okay." I'm 14, 15 maybe.
Yeah.
So shouldn't be reading it. Shouldn't be hearing about him seeing an Indian or a Native American get shot in the
Yeah.
face.
Murdered. Yeah.
Yeah, which is insane still. Just that whole story. And then so I'm reading this book, and I was like, I guess I should listen to their music.
Oh my god.
I never listened to their music before that, and then
It's unreal.
as soon as I heard him sing and play the songs, I was like, this is my favorite band ever. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna have this like special connection to it for the rest of my life, which was fantastic.
They're I love them so much, and they're a huge Brothers Creeper influence. Jim Morrison is like one of my favorite poets, and then just as a performer, like, and just the music they created, because they were like jazz musicians, and then Jim is this like shaman, and it's just like I just love the Doors, and like I definitely model my singing a lot after him. I love his style.
I've got a almost not like in that way a story of being introduced to the Doors. I have a funny story of how I was introduced. So back on like VH1, where they have
say it.
where they have like those
Say it.
playlist CDs of all like your old favorite classics and stuff like that.
VH1 Classics.
Yeah, they were like trying to sell it on an infomercial of like top 80s hits or 70s hits or something like that. And I heard Riders on the Storm, and I was like, what is that? Like, I was dying to know what it is. So, like, I did a whole bunch of research on, like, that CD of trying to figure out what was I hearing at that moment. And then I finally found it and just cling to it for, like, the rest of my time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was insane. That's how I was introduced by him. It was crazy.
That's cool. All right, it's fun to kind of figure out like where your first kind of like introduction to things are, because then you look back and like you have a starting point for the rest of your life on how everything's kind of branched out. And because I think for me, because of that Rancid record, that 2003 or that 2001, because it was abrasive, because it was so like different from everything else, I ventured off to like Fugazi, like
Oh bless.
I ventured off to like weird shit that no one else was listening to.
Yeah.
And so like Blood Brothers and just all the like crazy like abrasive grindcore almost shit.
Oh yeah. Oh my
like
gosh.
math rock nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then all my friends were still listening to like NoFX and
Mhm.
Bad Religion and all the other shit.
Right.
So it was fun all the way through.
Yeah,
So,
I was kind of the same way with that. In regards to like listening to different stuff that people don't ever want to like touch.
right.
Yeah, it all started like when I was in the 10th grade.
Devin has some weird stuff.
I listen to
he'll
some
tell
weird
you.
stuff.
The 80s, he's king 80s.
Yeah. So when I was in the 10th grade, I had a friend named Jamie, and he gave me this like CD out of his pocket. Like I was like, "What
I
is?"
don't even pocket. Is it the back pocket?
It was his jean pocket.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
On,
I don't know how you
on
get a
his
CD.
on his jean, like there was no case, there was nothing. He was like, "Dude, listen to this," and I was like, "What is it?" And it was like Oingo Boingo, and I was like, "What kind of a name is that?" And like it was their Nothing to Fear album, and I like plugged into my CD player and listened to the whole thing from front to back, and like. Once again, that whole my life just changed thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
I like got all their CDs and all this other stuff, and then from Oingo Boingo, it like led to this band called Mr. Bungle.
Yeah.
And then from there, it just went to like Pinkley Smooth, which is like a Avenged Sevenfold product, and I just was like eating all of it in because they had like just an orchestra of music. That they were using like different elements like synthesizers and all this
Yeah.
other stuff, and I was like, I want to do that because you don't hear that anymore.
Right. Mike
like,
Patton's insane.
Mike Patton's probably one of my favorite singers of all time. Like the things he can do with his voice is ridiculous. And
I don't think anybody else can do it.
no, he can't. Like from Faith No More to Mr. Bungle, and like he did. I don't know if you know this, but I Am Legend. He did all the mutant sound effects when they're going through all of the town. You know, when they're like doing rampages and
not
stuff
know
like
I
that.
didn't know that.
Yeah, he's the one who did the voices for that.
Which terrifying.
Which
What?
wasn't.
When
That's
you have
why
to
I
bring
love
in
him.
someone specific to do monster sounds.
He's
like,
insane.
Yeah,
I
Corey,
love that guy.
Corey Taylor, he did one of the Doctor Who villains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
the
that's so
water
funny.
villain or something like that. Fish
Fisher
God,
King or
Fish
something.
Man.
Yeah.
Neptune, something like that. I don't
something
know.
like that.
But yeah, Mike Patton is insane.
That's so
if I could
wild.
model my voice after
Did
him,
you
I
ever
would.
listen to any of the stuff that he did with Dillinger Escape Plan?
No, I didn't.
You still haven't?
I still haven't. I
All right.
wanna, but I haven't.
You have homework, sir.
I kind of figured
Yeah.
because when I saw those two mash up, I was like, I'm gonna have to come back to that,
Yeah,
and
because that
haven't since. So
it's such a beautiful album because that was one of my first I listened to Faith No More because my stepdad at the time was peddling like all that style of music and then all the metal and shit like that. So and then as I was growing into like whatever musical style that I still don't know what I have, I was like, Mike Patton's part of this band, and it was just crazy, all over the place, spastic nonsense, and very, very. It seemed like organized chaos.
that's
And
exactly what it sounds
yeah,
like.
and that's all I could do, and it was
Yeah.
like 4 or 5 songs, and it was perfect.
Yeah, like quote unquote, and Squeeze Me Macaroni and
Yeah.
Goodbye Sober Day. All those are like, who would even write something like that?
Right.
But it works so well. It's insane.
And I was really excited for the Fantomas record that he did, which is amazing too. So if you haven't listened to that, listen to
I'm
it.
gonna have to work on it.
Yeah, so that's fun. So we'll go back to your band, and we're looking at, so you have these 3 EPs. So all 3 of them are nonsensical for the most part, which I absolutely love.
Absolutely.
Absolutely love. So what do you think the direction of your band is going forward? Is it gonna be still like? Are you gonna ever take yourself serious?
No.
Not too seriously,
have you
at least.
Okay.
Not too seriously.
I would say we're going to keep it unexpected as possible.
Yeah.
Because the new stuff we're writing, like we just wrote like a Doors-esque song called
Okay.
The Shallow Grave Shuffle, and it's like, it really is like kind of like a doo-woppy shuffle.
It's absolutely the Doors.
Yeah.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. James was like, "Can you make like a Doorsy riff?" And I was like, "Yeah, give me like 10 minutes." And then I came into the garage the next day and was like, "This is what I got," and then that's what it was.
Yeah, like
fantastic.
the plan is we're doing a split with Muldire, and that'll have 2 songs on it, and we'll record those probably in April, and then we plan on writing a full length over the summer, and hopefully put that out maybe in the fall or
Yeah,
spring of
in the
next
fall.
year, and yeah, and though we're planning hopefully doing 13 tracks, and 3 will be old songs. 3 will be old songs. And the idea is just that, I mean, there's definitely a Brothers Creeper formula, but that formula is like, don't overthink it and just kind of do weird stuff. It's just like, do something that just kind of sounds bizarre. And we can pretty quickly determine when we write a song whether or not it's like...
Yeah, whether we
it's gonna
trash it or
work.
not. It's basically boils down to whatever will make us laugh the hardest is what we'll write.
I like it.
Because when we wrote Smut and writing the lyrics to Smut, I've never cried so hard in my life from laughing because of just the lyrics we were putting down.
Yeah.
It was just one story after the other with that entire album, and it was just so funny.
Yeah.
That's why I don't want to take ourselves too seriously. Is because if we lose that magic, then Brothers Creeper won't happen.
Yeah.
Because if we can't make ourselves laugh, there's no way we're gonna make y'all laugh at
Right.
all.
Yeah.
That's our main goal.
Maybe you want to add something?
I mean, well, I think you guys were you guys were on a roll.
Oh, okay. Well, I just feel like you haven't said enough, so I'm just trying to make us
Well, we were going
egalitarian.
a lot on like Saturday Night Frights and stuff, but I mean,
Well, you were there in that era.
I was
That awkward
in the
era.
crowd. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Brothers Creeper is, besides playing in like the jazz band back in school, Brothers Creeper is the first band that I've been in to where I'm actually out playing shows, and it's been so much fun. It's been quite an experience, and we definitely rely a lot on like audience participation at our shows.
Oh, yeah,
like,
absolutely.
We love just interacting with the crowd and making everybody laugh and making ourselves laugh if they're not laughing.
Yeah.
That's all we really care
But-
about.
Yeah.
Making the people laugh.
Yeah.
The classic thing is the musician arm cross, and my goal my goal at every show is to not see a single one of those. Like, my goal is to like point them out and be like, if you're not clapping, if you're not dancing, if you're not making like a fool of yourself, you're not taking this show the right way.
Right.
Because that tells me like you're analyzing this. Don't analyze this
Please
band.
don't.
This is Brothers Creeper. Like, you should be like, this is the band where you can goof off with your friends and like just have a good time. If you're trying to ingest it as much as possible, like, oh, I see they went to this chord. I'm like, get at it. Like, you need to like chill.
You can't understand this. Is basically
No,
the whole
right.
thing.
Like, just have
Don't.
a good time. Like, you
So
know.
I was talking to one of my employees because I'm a manager at one of the Verizon stores.
Rock.
Cool.
So I was talking to one of my employees because I was playing. I don't know what I was playing. Something loud and aggressive, and they were just like, "What is this nonsense? Why are you playing this so early?" I was like, "I'm having fun. I'm enjoying myself. Like, this is what makes me happy."
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, "We've seen how those people are at those shows. They're going crazy. They're punching people in the face. They're going head nodding and all that stuff." So I was like, "Yeah, there's that, but there's also like 3 different people in each of those shows. One with the crossed arms, looking like a bodyguard or looking like he's someone's dad or something.
Yeah.
The other one that is literally like punching people in the face and just enjoying themselves way too much. And then the other one that is just being a jerk the entire time. Like, I always feel like there's that part of it that, you have people just standing around doing nothing, but it's literally like those 3 are the ones that you see every single time.
Yeah.
For sure.
There are the tropes.
So I'm definitely the looking like
Security
crossed
guard.
arms looking. Yeah. So I got told at one of the cover band shows that I went to that I look like the bouncer.
I can see that.
That was fun. But I remember watching your show and watching your set, and I was like, I guess I can uncross these and have fun. So I appreciate
Good.
that sentiment, and I'm glad that you guys actually go out and that's part of your forethought of it to kind of get everybody moving and grooving a little bit, and make them not so static and break free a little bit.
That was one of the whole ideas of us doing like costumes and dress ups and stuff. It originally started with a Halloween show because it was Halloween. What else are you gonna do? But then it like expanded into doing it occasionally, and we're trying to do it more often, but that's what we want to do. We want to like bring you into the mindset that please don't overthink. Don't don't think so hard
We're not.
about we're not. Like, we were playing a county festival and we literally just wore workout equipment.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
like
with
Richard
sweatbands.
Simmons workout attire.
My shorts were up to my crotch. Like, I don't want people to like, oh, they're taking themselves seriously. I
No.
want people to laugh at what I'm wearing. That's my mindset when I think of a costume.
We always try to have like coordinating outfits of some sort.
Yeah.
I mean, the last time we just all had the black turtlenecks on, but yeah, we had like the workout gear. We'll dress like really 80s. We have these alien costumes. We're definitely gonna break out at
At
one
some
of the
point,
shows.
we dressed-
aliens are coming out.
Yeah,
Yes.
we dressed up as the Lone Rangers from
Oh, yeah.
yes.
That's fun.
Yeah, from
Which-
Airheads.
And
Freaking
no one
no
got
one
it.
got.
But it was a house
To be
show
fair,
of
it was-
18
yeah, it was a
years
bunch of,
Probably
like,
'cause you didn't have a Tonto
18-year-olds.
or something. Yeah.
That's such an underrated
We
classic.
even had the Lone Rangers on the kick drum, and like we had the full attire, and we even said like Adam Sandler. We held up a radio station like
I'm
Brendan
freaking
Fraser.
Brendan Fraser.
And they're like, no. And we're like, the Lone Rangers. Oh man, that was heartbreaking, but it was a good time.
That's
Yeah,
funny.
we're definitely gonna start upping the game when it comes to costumes. Like, I got a couple things in mind that people are gonna have no idea what I'm doing.
That's
Yeah,
exciting.
like the thing is, like Brothers Creepers theatrical, and it should feel kind of like larger than life, but it should never feel like you can't be a part of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is like the thing. It should be like a circus that you are in the ring somehow. Like you don't know how you got in the ring, but you're in the ring. And everything, the elephants are running around and the clowns, and like the motorcycle ball is loose and it's flying around and
There's flames everywhere.
flames. Yeah.
But you're
I
still
like
having a good time.
You're having a
watching
good time.
all
Your
of
arms are not crossed.
Yeah.
Because you're
Ex-
fleeing
right.
for your life.
Excellent. All right, so we're going. I want to go back to that first house show that you guys played as Brothers Creeper.
Yeah.
it. Okay.
So when I went to the show and saw you guys at 5 South, that was the same people that I was booking 10 years ago.
The bands that we were playing
Yeah,
with.
the bands.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Every band that was there, I booked 10 years ago.
Holy
oh my
cow.
gosh.
So
Wow.
going through that, it was a
Wow.
big piece of nostalgia for me.
Wow.
Seeing Rob, Sam, and Matt grown up,
Yeah.
because I was literally booking them when they were 16.
Wow.
That's insane.
And then so Brandon and DJ
Yeah.
from
Muldier.
Muldier, I was booking Joy Radio with Brandon and Daniel when they first came out.
Wow.
And then who else was there? So the metal band Dakota's Clear guys. So the guitarist I know and I've seen, because I booked them at the Lusby Community Center, and throughout the years I've been around the Tri-County area, and I would always
Right.
see him, run into him. The singer, I could not place for the life of me, and I'm watching him and I'm looking at his face, and I was like, I know you, and I was like, I finally got it, that, oh yeah, Pistol Creek, because the
Oh, yeah?
guitarist and the singer used to play in a band that I booked forever ago.
That's
That is so funny.
crazy.
Yeah, so it's interesting for me to see that, and it's a dual-edged sword, right? So I'm seeing everybody that grew up, and then I'm also seeing absolute stagnancy in the scene down there, because there's no new bands, there's no nothing.
Yeah.
So for me,
Yeah.
you guys are a new band for me.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
So for that house show that you guys played, how do you get to being able to actually play out in your hometown? And then are you guys playing out in Baltimore, DC? How is that working out for you guys now?
So, you go ahead.
Yeah, you guys
Well, so originally before I joined, and it was just these two, and they had like our friends George and Ridge would fill in on bass for them. They played these two shows that were like in a room at James' old church, and so they were able to kind of just put that on themselves. The house show, it was at somebody's house down by his school, so we knew somebody that owned the house there, and that's how we were able to get that show. And I mean, after that show, we kind of actually had like a couple-month hiatus, just because things got kind of crazy in all of our lives. And then we came back with another house show. So it's so far with all these shows we've been getting, it's people that we know, and it's like they have a house, or this. And then we got asked to play 5 South in Callaway, which is not the show you went to. We played there once before because another band couldn't make it. And they were like, hey, do you want to take our spot? And we're like, sure. And I'm pretty sure that was the first show we played that wasn't a house show, wasn't it? At 5 South?
Yeah.
Besides the festival?
Besides Bottom County.
Yeah,
down at the
really.
school.
That was like the first known house show.
Yeah.
So that's probably our maybe 5th or 6th show.
Yeah, something like that. It was been mostly house shows. Then we had that. And we had a skate house show, which was so
Yeah.
cool.
That
People
was-
down in the park have like a mini ramp in their basement. We played that show. It was just insane.
That was literally my
That was
boyhood
like
dream.
a
Yeah,
dream
that
to
was
play
what it
that.
was.
Playing
Play
roller
in
skating.
front of a skate
Someone's
All the
ramp.
skate
skateboard got
videos on
launched
half
right by
pipe,
my
yeah,
head.
like
It was
that's the
insane.
dream.
It's like, it was like watching Viva La Bam, but like I was living it. That's all I wanted.
And now
It's not okay.
The next couple shows we have, we mentioned earlier, we are playing with the Buttertones next Wednesday, March 28th at the Black Cat in DC. And that show, we've been screaming about it.
Still
like,
shocked.
I'm internally screaming right now, trying not to blow out the microphone, but it's just a dream come true. The Buttertones are a band we discovered last year. Around this time, actually. And they're like, I don't even know how you would describe them. It's like, I mean, you have a saxophone player, surf rock. Like, they're just so cool. Never heard anything like them. And we were going to go to the show anyway, and they were actually opening for a band, but the headliner dropped. We already had tickets, though, and James and I were talking over dinner one night, and I was like, well, the headliner dropped, and he was like, why don't we see if we can open for them? And I was like, what? And we sent them an email with all of, like, our Bandcamp, a YouTube video of us playing, all this stuff. We didn't hear anything, and the next day we called the venue, and we're like, you know, there's somebody from booking. We want to see if you guys need an opener for the Buttertone show. And the chick was like, yeah, we do. And then lo and behold, you know, she talked to the agent of the Buttertones, and now we're opening for them.
That's amazing.
Which is just insane. Just opportunity of a lifetime, because we just love them.
It's crazy. I cannot wait. And then next Saturday, we're playing at Sidebar in Baltimore. We're playing with our friends Changing Scene, and we're opening for a band called Children's Books from Pennsylvania.
So those are our two first out of area shows. And then after that we have another show at 5 South. And then, I mean, we have several other house shows also lined up. We have shows lined up till like July.
Probably. Yeah. And the goal is probably to start getting out of the county.
Yeah, that's what we're thinking.
Because my goal initially was like, let's keep playing around here, because I think I'm starting to see kind of people start to kind of form back together. Because I feel like everyone was kind of... What has happened with Brothers Creeper that's kind of insane is that we were playing house shows with different groups of people. Like, we played with, like, a bunch of 18-year-olds who had bands. And then we played with a bunch of kind of, like, 30-year-old guys, like Muldier guys and, you know, like Deadbeat Holiday guys. And then we were playing with our friends, because we've just been putting on our own shows. And then we were just able to kind of corral all of them together. And I've seen 5 South shows are getting, like, pretty big. And I just feel like finally people are coming together.
And it's a nice eclectic mix. Because, I mean, the last show we played, we had some of our friends that are, like, the 18-year-olds that came out and saw us. And then we had our friends that are in their 30s that came out and saw us. So I love that we can just reach these different audiences. And I love how you mentioned, you know, it's been kind of the same scene for the last 10 years or so.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Travers, who books at 5 South, he made a comment about how, like, when he plays with his band, people still request songs they played, like, 10 years ago. Yeah. And just me being new into this scene, I just find this local scene to be so just accepting. And, like, it really does feel like a family to me. Like, all the bands we've met and played with, I love all the guys so much. They're all so sweet and supportive. And they're just all fun to hang around with. So I'm really enjoying the local scene a lot.
And personally, I attribute a good amount of our success to Muldier. Because we played a house show at Chris's house, who plays in A Year Too Late. And we met Muldier through there because DJ, the singer, came up to us and, like, was freaking out after we played our 15 or however minute set. And then, like, from there, it was like just like a marriage almost. Like, he just shot into the stars and haven't looked back since. And I mean, everybody in that band especially, I mean, we love them to death. Like, they've opened us up to a whole bunch of new stuff that's kind of helped us progress in our careers too.
What's, like, crazy is, like, in high school, I think, you know, just like being a kid, there was sort of a competitive element, and also just, like, kind of the boy band metalcore scene was, like, who could sound more produced. And, and eventually people stopped using actual drums, and they used, like, programmed drums because they wanted to sound like they were on Rise Records. And, you know, I was shocked that anyone would do that. And I was just shocked because I was like, I feel like you're really kind of selling yourself out because you don't want to put out, like, a demo. But then back then it was like, no, the demo quality is, you know, you need the good stuff. And everyone was kind of competitive. But nowadays it's like, no, people are cutting records in their bedrooms, and people are making their own merch, and, you know, people have their own studios like this, and it's awesome. And it just feels like people are more about having a community. Like, no one's, like, trying to get on a label. No one's, like, people are making their own labels. People are putting out their own tapes. People are putting the stuff out on Bandcamp. it's like a really good time to be in a band.
I think it's
you
come
know?
full circle because that's a lot of that stuff was happening when I was doing shows heavily,
Yeah.
and I could see it.
Uh-huh.
And I can really see, people trying to be a community rather than dicking everybody over, trying to get a leg up on each other or whatever. So that's, for me, this is a really cool experience to see basically a community that I thought was pretty much dead really come back, and come back with people that are able to support rather than the kids that are just trying to beg their parents to
Yeah. It's nice being older.
right. So, and it's a more mature atmosphere. We saw it with I think I saw it with the response that DJ had to his post about the shooting, and kind of bringing the community together with that, where it's bigger than what people think, which is very, very cool for me to see that, because I didn't feel like that when I was doing stuff. So seeing this and seeing it grow into what it is, even though it might be still the same 20, 30, maybe 40 people doing it, it feels like a bigger cohesive unit now.
It's definitely
it does.
stronger. It's very,
It
very
feels
much alive.
good.
And that's been really cool, just even at that local show, and then what Travers is doing. So that's, for me, this is a really cool experience all the way through. So I'm glad that you guys are a part of this.
Thank you,
Yeah,
and I
thank
appreciate
you,
your
yeah.
perspective. It's like so wild, that you have such a larger perspective on it. Like, I mean, we have our little window of high school to now, but I mean, you've seen like before and now, and it's like crazy, because I didn't know all those bands that we played with. I figured they kind of came out of the swamps too, but I didn't know how long they've been dwelling there. Like
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean, so you look at like Brandon and DJ, they've been playing forever, and it's just really cool to see that, and the fact that they've kind of taken you guys under their wings, and
It's
hopefully,
Oh yeah.
it sounds like you're able to really fly free and get everything that you want done, which is very cool. Do you guys plan on really continuing to play out as much as possible? And
yeah,
are you able
absolutely.
to really coordinate that with your lives and jobs that you have now?
So,
So
right
far.
now what works best is we kind of shoot for around one show a month. I mean, we do have next Wednesday, we have the Buttertones. That Saturday we have Baltimore, and then the next week we have another one. But we're trying for around one a month because we are really busy. I mean, James is in his master's program, about to become a teacher. Frank works full time.
Yep.
I have 2 jobs right now. We're really busy outside of the band, but we always make time to write and to have practice.
Oh
And
yeah.
there's a great tenacity behind Brothers Creeper. I think it's all just kind of like a weird niche for us. Like, like I'm writing lyrics in between like teaching kids like multiplication, and it's just like all of the work is done in-house. Like we do all the graphics, we do all the social media, we've been doing the records ourselves, and it's just been like we've been able to kind of churn stuff out because it's all us. It's at our pace. And once I finish my degree in May, we plan on doing like a lot of shows over the summer, and then me having a teaching job, it's really the most ideal job for being a musician, because you get like breaks, you have weekends and evenings, and of course, you're a lot of that you're spending working on teaching, but it's if you're passionate about both things, you make it work. And I've been able to do my master's program and put out a record and a book, and if you're passionate about it, you can make it happen. You don't sleep
Definitely.
a lot, but you can you can get the stuff done. And Brothers Creeper, to me, I can only see just going up from here.
Yeah.
And I love this band. Like, I truly do. I love this band, and I love these two people so much. This is my fiance and my best man, and it's just like, and this band is just like a vehicle for us. It's been a creative outlet that's as much as soul edifying as it is just like a good creative thing to do. And people like it, and that's kind of what shocks me. And that's been the best thing, because I honestly thought, like, we'll put it on Bandcamp, we'll have, like, our 3 friends listen to it. And where it's at now, that people have our shirts with our names on it, and they're okay with that. that was
paid money for
consensual.
it.
They give us
We didn't
money.
force
and-
them into it. It's weird.
No. And that we're here and you're asking us questions about this is like, all right, like, thank you. Like, it's
So
wild.
that kind of release from the normal everyday hubbub that you guys have, do you think that's what really drives you to keep this project going and really have fun with it?
I believe so. Because I've done other musical projects in the past, and each time I've done one, it's just been the most stressful thing in my life because of just butting heads with people and people with egos and all that other stuff. But when you enter a band with, two of your best friends, it's just so much fun. I've never had this much fun playing music in my life. And that's one of the reasons I want to keep it going, because I don't want the fun to stop. And writing music and writing lyrics and making albums, it's just a fun experience and a fun time. Because if I'm not doing that with my band, I'm just hanging out with my best friends. And it's that, plus, I mean, it's just a ton of fun, and it's different, And that's at least for me, what my tenacity is of just keeping it going. But it's definitely a huge stress relief from my job.
Yeah.
I've been in I'll say something really quick, Naomi, but I've been, in bands since high school, but they've been like very serious, and they've been more mainstream, more commercial acts, and that's been fine, like more jazz stuff or more contemporary. And it's been cool. It's been very serious. And the thing about Brothers Creeper is like I do the graphics and I write the lyrics, and I put together the lyric videos, and I get their veto powers over everything. And I've needed a creative outlet that lets me just do whatever I want all the time, because the other acts I've been in have been like, I have to kind of like wait to finish something. I have to hold off on doing the social media.
Stick to a straight path.
Yeah, stick to something.
Which is the cool thing. Like, if I bring anything to James guitar-wise, where I think it's kind of like out of the norm, he like just embraces it, and then we make it into something. I don't have a wall where I hit, where it's like, well, that's as far as I can go. It's like, if I want to make a jazz song that's kind of Halloween, but kind of like super punk, it's going to happen, There's not one path where we have to take. It's like, all right, so this is what works. This is what we stick with. When we have so many different avenues of what we can do.
There's no rules, man.
That's
No
what I
rules.
love.
Yeah,
Never been in an environment like that before, and I just go freaking crazy, and I love it.
Like, we can make a record, we can make a comic book, we can make shirts, we can make posters. It's like we can just make stuff, and it's just like a cool feeling to be able to just like. There's just really doesn't feel like there's really any limit of what we can do, and like the support we can get. Like, we had a guy from Croatia review our record, and I was like, I don't even know where that is. I guess it's real. Like, I did Google it.
It was
a
having
real.
a lot of issues recently. Yeah,
We just realized the Philippines aren't below Florida. Like,
The Philippines is not in Latin America.
we were blown away.
I was
by
born
that.
there. No,
Yeah, sorry,
is awkward.
we did not know.
We're learning our geography.
I reference in my poem Slam Shack, I reference a guy as a Latino, and he's actually Filipino, and he told me it's not the same
not the
thing,
same,
buddy.
no.
And I was like,
Yikes.
message to all straight white males, the Philippines is not in Latin America. Or you want to add something, Naomi?
Oh, I was just going to go on. I mean, no two songs of ours sound the same. And I mean, we've written songs and we bring them all together. Like, for Hot Topic, we wrote that coming back from a road trip, and we intended it to sound incredibly different than how it actually sounds. And Newly Dead's another one. James wrote it, and it's totally different than what they were originally going for.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's kind of the beauty in it, is that you bring this one thing to the table and it transforms into something insane.
I will say the writing process is kind of similar to The Doors. In fact, that because I write the majority of the lyrics, and then I collaborate with Devin and Naomi, and I'm the drummer, so I have some theory and I have some melody, but I can't say, Devin, it's a this chord, it's this progression.
Right.
So I have a melody, and I have songs. When I write, I've been writing songs since I was 14, and I've always, if I look at my paper, I know how it goes because I write the drum tracks, and being like a song drummer, I'll like, no, this is like 8 bars here, it's a 16 bars thing, it's this BPM, and so I have to take it to Devin, and I'll be like, the riff is kind of like this, and it'll either be Devin nails it verbatim, or he does something else, and we go with it, and it's like better than what I had envisioned.
Yep.
And then Naomi kind of has this overarching vision of like how that will actually be orchestrated, how that will actually work, if it will work. So it's kind of like a backwards songwriting process,
Yeah,
and
it
it's
is.
like rhythm and lyrics. It's like, well, Brothers Creeper is really an idea. The songs are ideas, they're stories.
Right.
So they are written that way. You know, it's not like the hooks are the lyrics, really. I mean, and that's so it's kind of it's an interesting process because, you know, sometimes we might be writing, the song might not really be coming together. And that's usually a song where we like, this is too much work, let's shelve it. When Brothers Creeper songs start to be like strenuous is when you go, this is not a Brothers Creeper
Yeah,
song.
like, we need to take a break
if
on
this
that
isn't
one.
more than 3 chords, we're wrong.
I like that. All right, cool. So I want to transition a little bit to JR's book, because you just released this
February.
February. So this is a book of poems. How many poems are in there? Do you know?
25.
25 poems. Perfect. Where does this project really start for you? Does it start in high school, college?
So I've probably been writing poetry since maybe like middle school. But it wasn't really until probably college that, because my thing with always making art is like a desire to share it. And when I feel I don't really have a medium to kind of get it out to people, I'm not as passionate about making it. Like, I'm not the kind of guy who would make art, hide it in a warehouse, and then die, and you'd find it like 50 years later. Like, it's out there. Maybe it's obscure, but it's out there, so that when I'm dead, it's out there. And so it wasn't until probably when I was like 20 or 19 that someone told me, like, oh, there's a website called Hello Poetry where you can upload your poems and share them. And, you know, up to that point, I had done a few, like, spoken word things, and I had, you know, written poems, but it wasn't until I found, like, a medium that I could put it out and share it that, because feedback is kind of like a really big thing for me. So when I was finally getting feedback and that people were liking it, and I was able to kind of see how people will react to it and how I might change it, that's when it got really, kind of really started moving. And then last year, you know, it was really probably Brothers Creeper that got me thinking, like, I can make my own book. Like, because we made our own records and we were making our own merch. And then I was like, I can make a book. Like, I can do that. Like, DIY is like, you can make your own book. Because, like, my dreams are in high school are to do all these things. And then you find out through DIY, like, you can just do it. And if you're passionate about it, your people will be passionate about it. And so I released a book last August. And it was real. I mean, those poems are like out there, and I'm stoked on them. But it was more like a test run. Like, I was like, oh, like, I can do this. And reading the poems, because I started doing like readings, and as I was reading them, I was like, oh, these are like not very good read. Like, like personally, if you're like reading them by yourself in a nook somewhere, like, it's fine. But as I read them, I was like, oh man, it's like 50 syllables per word. I was all thesaurus for this one. Like,
Right, because if you look at the actual book, the book's great quality. I like holding it; it feels good. And then when you look at how the words are formatted on the page, it's very easy to see kind of your mindset for some of that stuff, because you're using different structures. You're using different beats in the writing, but I don't know if that actually translates to actually speaking that, because looking at that stuff, looking at the like Memento where you have the 2 columns, or the G.G. Allen one where it's literally like all the words that were ever written are right in there, and then you have there was another one that I don't remember, but it had the slashes in there, but it was
that was We Got Young.
Yeah, okay. So you look at this, and it's formatted in a special way that is unique to just poetry. And that's something that I forgot, because when I was in high school, I was writing poetry and
oh, awesome,
and being in like the literary club or whatever, like a magazine. And then, so I remember like reading your book. That brought me back to what I was doing years ago, and I couldn't remember. I'll have to try and find the website that I was posting stuff on, because it was Word something, and I don't remember. Word Spring maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't imagine those poems really translating all that well to spoken word.
So it's been like my goal for the second book was like it should be as dynamic on the page as it is read. So like my first book is just very like I was really like Jim Morrison was such a big poet for me, and like I was like, oh, he's so out there. You just write about whatever. The metaphor is totally unknown to anyone but him, if him. And I want to write like that. So like the first book is just like these very large, crazy, archaic things. And as I read them, I was like, people aren't really gonna get it, and you have to like kind of. I realized you have to create like a syllable sandwich, like spoke like a good like spoken thing, then put in sort of like a sort of thick thing that's kind of like because I like learning new words. I'm a big word guy, so something that's kind of really large that then you can maybe explain more in like a jargon sort of sense. So, and I've been trying to. I've been touring the book a little bit. I've done a few cafe gigs and some open mics with my friend George Adamson, who just put out a record.
Which is amazing.
Phenomenal.
I really
so good.
like it. It's like summertime music.
Yeah,
it's so
like
good.
sad shit.
It's
which
so
is
good.
fantastic.
It's
did a
so
great
good.
job.
And so we've been doing shows together. We've been doing open mics. We've been putting on our own shows. And my goal has been like, let's make sure I can read these as well as they are on the page. And it's been an interesting challenge. And like, I think every reading I've been like, oh, I can read it like this. Like Slam Shack is read with two voices because one's in italics, and that's like that's the cashier. And if you've ever seen Grind, like the guy from Chili and Such, it's sort of like, welcome to Chili and Such. It's like kind of that voice. It's like, welcome to Slam Shack, home of the Nosh and Mosh. And like,
I think that was one of my favorite ones that you did.
That's mine.
Slam Shack, just like reading that, how, like if you're ever part of the music or punk scene at all, everything that you're hitting on there.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
wonderful.
Yeah, that's my favorite one too.
Yeah, thank you.
So, and so your book is really a big homage to punk itself.
It is, yeah.
You have your starting point from what I was reading was that Dookie record, and and Tony Hawk, which is so much fun for me.
Yeah.
Just there's such a big generational shift on how people discover music.
Yeah.
And you have it through video games, you have it through just being exposed on TV, but also like not having TRL anymore, and it's so weird. So that's fun. That's a great story. I like that. So this is an homage to punk rock in all its forms.
Right.
You have your straight edge in there a little bit. You have your hardcore in there.
Yeah.
So when you were thinking about this book, was that during your dissertation period too, or how did? So
I started writing the book last November.
Okay.
And so this was after I published my thesis, and I'm still doing the research, hopefully for a book, and it's currently submitted for publication in a journal. So it's work that I'm still continuing, and I had so much that I had learned, and I was like, I wanted to write poems that could continue the conversation. So a lot of them are kind of historical narratives that are really just my thesis, but put in poetic form. Like punks are my poets is the etymology of the word punk. So like in the 1600s, it was referred to as a prostitute by Shakespeare. Shakespeare was the first punk. Like I mean, and then like it became like Tinder. It was like not the app, but like the it was
actual kindling.
Yeah, it was actually kindling, and I was like, oh, that's great that punk was originally something you would use to make fire, which is cool. And then it became and then like 1900s, it became like it was like if you were in jail and you were like prison Mike's like crank buddy,
love slave.
like bottom. You were the bottom. You were a punk, and it's like it was like a homosexual term in prison. And here it is now, and it's like all these things in one, like this, degenerate, and it was something I really didn't get to explore in my thesis, and to explore in a poem, it was just a lot of fun. Like I talk about how I met Ian MacKaye, and I talk about Ian MacKaye, who is a huge hero of mine, and so it's part my observations coming through the scene, and then it's part my my thesis is kind of how it came together.
And that's what it really comes out as, is that it's cool to see that you've taken punk rock in an objective form, in more of a a research based form,
Mhm.
and it does come out in your art a little bit with obviously your music, but the poetry itself really is a thinking poetry, I think, because you have all your nostalgia in there. You have, your descriptions of these house shows. You have these descriptions of jubilation, of actually feeling what that kind of music does to you. But you also have that kind of aesthetic of this is the history of it. This is how we're looking at it. This is how people are looked at that are this.
Yeah.
So, and it's really inclusive, I think, and it does a really good job overall. So I was really happy reading it because it covered literally like all aspects of this genre almost.
I
which is
appreciate
very
that.
cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. And it was something definitely done consciously because I'm just like a big thinker, and I feel like I've always kind of been like a historian since I was a kid. Because when I first saw punk, I remember like feeling that like viscerally, of course, like, oh man, this just makes me want to be this. It makes me want to write this. But I remember also as a kid, like, I want to just know everything about this. I want to know all the bands. I want to know how they make their records. I want to know what scene was it like where were they living that they could make this? Were they like impoverished? Were they more like middle class, but they were just still pissed off at the society? And so I've always kind of liked punk rock historically speaking, and being in the scene, it's like part of it is like I got a leg in the classroom and I got a leg in the pit is kind of how I feel. Like I love writing about being in it, and I like writing about kind of the overall like what's going on if I took a step back. It's just a really magical thing from both perspectives.
That was my approach to, as soon as I heard what punk was, and as soon as I heard what the style of music is, I just went basically, for lack of a better term, balls deep.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
went all the way back, right?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
So I remember growing up, we had AIM, we had Yahoo,
Yeah.
we had like chat rooms, and we had
Yeah.
forums, we had all this stuff. So I'm going in and I'm researching what band influenced this band, what influenced this band,
Yes.
finding the source, right? So that's what I'm doing, and I'm going in and I'm talking to everybody, trying to fit into this community. And it was really cool because when you go into like my generation, where you have the first really like kindlings of the internet, you
Yeah.
have really that community, that online community that first forms.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the pockets of counterculture that are around the country
Yeah.
at this point, which is really cool. I remember going to a Mission of Burma show,
Oh,
and I am
sick.
16 at this show, and everybody else is double my age at
Yeah.
least.
I believe it.
So what really stuck with me for that was the fact that it was an all ages show and I could go, and that was
Yeah.
amazing to me.
Yeah.
So that right there like sealed it to where all I'm doing for the rest of my life are all ages shows. If I ever do this is what it should be.
Amen.
And
Absolutely.
then the biggest impact that I had on me was this old guy. I remember just overhearing, and he's talking about some old British bands and him arguing with this little pissant on the internet about one band started here and they were like, nah. So I remember agreeing, like I was nodding my head agreeing with this old guy, and he was like, that guy gets it, that kid gets it. And then we talked the entire rest of the show,
That's awesome.
That's
which is
so
amazing
cool.
because the Mission of Burma started in like 78.
Yeah.
So that's a band that like was old before I even got like of age.
Uh-huh.
So it was just crazy to me. But that's really like that passion that you have to go find really like your love, which comes out in the poetry, comes out in the music, is a really big thing that I hope everybody gets to connect to and be a part of. And
Yeah.
I don't think enough people get that part.
I appreciate that, Chris. I've always wanted art that was a connection. Like my poems, I write them hoping that there is something that is relatable. And Brothers Creeper is as inclusive. If the idea is like it's theatrical, but you're part of the circus. And I appreciate art for art's sake and people who make things that you're just like you're on another level. I mean it's awesome, but punk rock and realizing that you can do it yourself and people are there to like support you because you're in it for the right reasons. That's what it's all about. So.
Yep. I do want to touch a little bit on your thesis before we wrap up.
Yeah.
So, and so we talked about Black Cat earlier. You guys playing at Black Cat.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about this before we go into something serious.
Okay.
So I saw Cursive with
Go
open-
for it.
Yeah,
Go
yeah,
for it,
yeah.
Chris. I'm so ready.
So I saw Cursive at Black Cat, and Beach Slang opened for them.
Uh-huh.
I know that you are the biggest Beach Slang fan that
I
I've
am.
ever come
Yes,
across.
he is.
Yes, I am.
So talk to me. I want to know why, first of all, and then is it just something that clicked with you? What happened?
I am more than willing to tell you this.
Okay.
Okay.
Here we go.
I love Beach Slang so much. They are my favorite band. I will proselytize them till I die. They are just James Alex and Charlie Lowe and the people in that crew are just very special people to me. And the music and the community that it invites is just it's a magical thing. I'll just say, it was 2014 and it was like a Fuse article that was like the top 10 pop punk songs of September. And it was 2014, I think. And at that time, I was kind of on my way out of like the pop punk of that era. Like I was like, Story So Far is like kind of on its way out. Turnover hadn't put out a record in a while. And I don't know, I just felt like I was kind of moving on to something else. And I was like, let's just see. There might be something for me in here that like might be something different. I was, and because there was a lot of like, a lot of bro pop punk at that time. And I'm scrolling through the names and I'm like, okay, this is cool. And then I just see Beach Slang, Dirty Cigarettes. And I just, I'm a big linguophile, so I was like, those just words together are just very aesthetically pleasing. And I remember I clicked on it. Are you familiar with the song at all?
I probably heard it, but
Yeah, because it was out, so they probably played it. And it starts with this bend, and then it goes into the song, and the lyrics and the opening verse is this raspy, like echoey voice, and these big washy guitars, and he's like, I write a lot, it's mostly lies, I fall in love to pass the time, and I was like, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard in my life. And to me, I think like just big washy drum like guitar and like a very atmospheric like raspy vocal is something that just gets me. And I listened to that EP, and that's the second one they put out that year, and they put out Who Would Ever Want Anything So Broken first. And I'm digging those two EPs, and I follow them on social media, and it's very new. And this is before the Cursive tour, which was spring 2015. And, I just became so enamored with this group, and I just was like, I need to know everything about this band. And all the lyrics were so poetic, and the music was just something that I just so gravitated towards because it was punk rock, but it was something about it just felt so gooey and atmospheric, and the lyrics felt so inviting, and I just felt like it was music that just spoke so directly to like my core that this
Right.
was like kind of just like ragtag, like misfit kid music that just was like poetic,
And you talk about this in your book. You
I
have
do.
the poem about it. About
The show
missing,
you went to.
About missing the show that I went to.
Yeah.
And then there was, I think it was a piece about anxiety,
Yes.
right?
It's
So-
probably my favorite poem in the book, actually.
And it hits home with me a little bit because I don't ever want to drive anywhere, and it's
Yeah.
not because it's not because I don't want to like get to the show and I don't want to like see that band because that's one of the bands that I want to see. It's I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to like
Yeah.
leave my house. I don't want to deal with people. I don't want to be a part of them.
Yeah.
So it hit home a little bit for me, and then I smiled because we talked about Beach Slang before.
Yeah.
And so I was at that show, and I was super excited for Cursive because Cursive was supposed to play the Happy
He's like a seminal
Angry
record,
Organ.
right? I think that's what you told me.
What is that? Whatever. I'm butchering the name, but it was the 10-year release or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was super excited because that was my favorite album by them. It was a big, kind of like what you were talking about, big sprawling orchestral piece, really able to bring in other pieces of the art in there. So it had that whole story, the whole nine, right? So I was super excited. I thought they were gonna play it front to back. I was gonna be happy. I was gonna leave and then never talk to anybody again. And
Yeah.
he like died.
Yeah.
So that didn't happen. A friend and I are at the show, and it's a hodgepodge of different people here. We see them all in like their leather jackets and tight pants. And it's a mix between like younger and older people, which is cool. I thought everybody that listened to Cursive was 40, because they've been around for so long. So I'm watching this band play, and it's Beach Slang, and I'm like, I remember listening to them, and I'm like, I don't hate them, so let's take a look. Hopefully they're good, and they make up for the band that just played, because that one wasn't good.
Okay.
So they don't. They stop in the middle of songs because they're too drunk to play, and then also too drunk to not talk about how great their bass lines are, and their drummer is, and their guitars are, and how poetic their words are. And they stop their songs mid song to tell everybody about this.
Right.
And it was one of the most pretentious things I've ever seen.
Yeah, interesting.
And I'm glad that you didn't see that, because your love for that band, I think, would have been tarnished.
It's an interesting thought I've had. Yeah.
And I'm also kind of disappointed, because I do everything that you talked about, like that raspy voice, the jangly guitars, all that. Like, I remember not hating their music, and I will never listen to them ever again. And then Cursive destroyed me, because they played like 7 songs from that record that they were doing a whole tour about, and then finished the rest of the record on their encore.
Man.
Which is so disappointing, because they didn't even play it all the way through. So it was a bummer of a show.
Yeah, whole night bummer.
Yeah. So when I read that poem again, and I looked at that, not only did it like resonate with the anxiety piece, but it also resonated with the fact that that show sucked. So sorry, Beach Slang and Cursive, if you ever listen to this, which I highly doubt that you will.
Beach Slang, I love you.
And I was listening to a podcast called All Fantasy Everything, and one of the lines today was, in Portland, they still teach Cursive, but it's just that indie rock band. Which is hilarious to me.
That's so good.
So, the last little bit, and then we'll get out of here, is I want to talk about your thesis, your straight edge, and kind of that process.
Oh, yeah.
Because you interviewed a bunch of people for that.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
And just randomly met Ian MacKaye.
It was completely random. I mean, it was definitely something I wanted to do, but I thought, like, the god of straight edge, Ian MacKaye, I don't know where, on his Discord throne, I did not think that would ever happen. But if I could backtrack, it was like, so I was a history major, and you can opt to do a senior thesis, which is a year-long research project. And over the summer, before my senior year, I was like, I really don't know what I'm going to do it on, but I know I want to do one, because, like, I could do 2 400-level classes or do a year-long research project, which is like, heck yeah, I want to do that. And I remember coming into my class, my professor, and being like, I'd probably, like, maybe do something on, like, John Wilkes Booth, or maybe, like, Vietnam, or, like, I don't know, straight edge and hardcore in Washington, D.C. in the 1980s. And he was like, whoa, like, what is that last thing? And I was like, oh, it's this thing. He didn't know about straight edge, but he was a big music guy. And he knew about 77 punk, and that was, like, it.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, hardcore was, like, suburban punk, and it was, like, all over the country, and it was, like, a uniquely American phenomenon, but it broke out to mainstream in the 90s. And he's like, what the heck? In straight edge? And I'm like, yeah, that's, like, it's like these kids who don't want to do drugs and don't want to drink.
Yeah.
And it was a movement. And he's like, well, that's like a big history thing. Like, why was that a movement at that time? And I was like, he was so jazzed that I went with it. And really the doors kind of opened. Like Scott Crawford, who was a documentarian in Annapolis, he was releasing a documentary called Salad Days. And I went to the premiere because he was premiering the video, and then also Dot Dash was playing, who features members of Dag Nasty, and it features the bassist, the second bassist for Minor Threat, Steve Hansgen, who played on Out of Step. And
Salad Days is an homage to the Minor Threat days.
Yes. Yeah, it's all about, because that song is a reflection of this 81 to 83 period in DC hardcore, and just very just ephemeral times that, like, you have to zone in really quickly to look at. And so I meet Steve there, and I meet Scott, and they're both just so cool. And Scott, at that time, my hardcore knowledge was like I knew the bands. I was a big Black Flag guy and my Bad Brains guy, and my Minor Threat knowledge was actually pretty much like I know Straight Edge. I wasn't super familiar with like I knew Fugazi, but I didn't really know like everything about the band. Well, I mean I do now, but meeting Steve, I didn't know he was the original bassist, but he told me like, oh, I play on Out of Step, and I was like, well, would you be willing to interview about Straight Edge? And he's like, oh yeah, sure, I'd love to do that. And he ends up inviting me to his house, and we had probably a 2-hour conversation.
That's amazing.
He's showing me like he's got a wall of records. He's showing me like tapes of Minor Threat from like basement jams, and he's showing me like German Prince and just this rarities of Minor Threat that
I would die happy.
I mean is insane. And he literally talked to me for 2 hours. I mean, it was like I didn't realize that was not the norm for a documentary, like that someone would be willing to spend 2 hours of their time in their own house for you to talk about their band from 40 years ago, whatever, 30. And I had this, and then he was like, I'll hit up Henry Rollins for you, and I'll hit up Ian, and I'll do what I can. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. He was just so willing to help me. Well, then I found out about the great thing about being near DC is like all these libraries now have these collections. So University of Maryland has a zine archive, all zines, and then Martin Luther King Jr. Library in D.C. has a punk archive where Mark Anderson and Mark Jenkins, who wrote Dance of Days, was like a seminal, basically, the seminal D.C. alternative music scene book. It's from like 78 to pretty much the 90s. And all their primary source research is there. They donated all of it. And all these hardcore punks who are now in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who are like, I have all these flyers, and I'm just going to, like, get rid of them. Do you want them? They've donated them. So I spent days just pouring through zines and flyers and records and tapes. And, I mean, I'm up to my eyeballs in this stuff. I mean, it was just an endless amount. I probably didn't even put a dent in what's there. And the story is no joke, is that I'm reading a zine, reading a Minor Threat interview with Ian MacKaye. He's on the cover, and I look up, and he's standing in front of me. And he goes, what are you looking at? And I was like, shocked. I mean, Ian MacKaye is right in front of me. I know him. I'm looking right at him on paper, and he's right in front of me. And I'm trying to play it cool, because I'm like, in my mind, like, the historian is like, you gotta play it cool, you gotta get that interview. The other part of me is like, Straight Edge, like, Fugazi, Embrace, The Evens, like, all these sick bands. And I managed to play it cool, and he agrees to do an interview. He's like, you want to come by Discord? We can do an interview. And I ended up just being able to do a phone interview because things were so crazy. But the Discord interview, as far as I know, still stands. I could check it out. And he was just so accommodating, and we talked for a long time, and he filled in the gaps with how it was to write a song at 18 years old about something that you just kind of saw, and then it became a movement, something he never intended for it to happen. And so that's the history part of my research, is like, how is it that these underage kids felt that they needed to identify as this, that it had to be a lifestyle, that you had to so outspokenly say, I don't do these things. Like, what was society like at that time? And my research shows that, like, in the 70s, people were, like, drunk. They were alcoholics. I mean, it's the me decade. It was like, the world is going to come to an end. Cocaine becomes plentiful in the 80s. The hippies are just kind of burnouts at this time. Everything kind of sucks. There's the gas shortage, everything just kind of sucks. Inflation, stagflation, there's no jobs, Watergate has happened at this time, and Vietnam is ending. There's just huge distrust in the country at this time, and it's sort of drugs are seeping into middle-class neighborhoods, and they're becoming, and, parents are divorcing, there's a huge divorce rate, there's a huge alcoholism rate, and so for these kids in these kind of posh areas in D.C., it's not like, I mean, the reality is that drugs and alcohol is an everyday thing, and you've got these hippie kids who are just buttheads, the jocks who are doing cocaine, and the keg stands in suburban neighborhoods. Everyone's just bored. There's nothing to do. And then along comes skateboarding and punk rock, and it just opens, it finally is a vehicle for something for kids to do. And because, you know, at that time, it's all arena rock bands, or it's kind of laid back like Jimmy Buffett bands. It's nothing that like the kids feel like they can rally around. And then you've got skateboarding, and you've got like DIY punk shows. And Ian MacKay's first show is The Cramps in 1980, and he's like, that changed my life forever. And the research was just, I mean, I got to, you know, interview all these sick people. I'm going through all this research, and I was able to present it in Baltimore, and hopefully it's being published, and I'm hoping to write a book off of it. And it was just the best experience. And then, of course, you know, coming out of all that, and I'm not in a punk band, like that is blasphemous, like, to the highest degree. That, like, I mean, I will say, my brother Ridge, who was in a band called Poured Out, we were doing like studio stuff, and I have a studio band called Doublethink, and it's like new wave, like post-hardcore stuff, and we were putting out stuff, and but that it wasn't the same, you know, as like playing shows and like getting in people's faces, and like, you know, my brother is the audio engineer, and he, you know, I needed him to write these songs, and I needed something that I could do. And Devin is the riff machine, so like, and we hadn't played in a band in years, and it just, you know, happened to be the way it was. And so I'm coming off this high of a year's, I mean, it was like a 115-page paper. I had met Ian MacKay and Steve Hansgen and documentarians and done this research. I got to start a band. And so Brothers Creeper is all that like energy. And then, you know, at this point, I'm like, I've researched hundreds of bands. I've been listening to hardcore and punk rock every single day for a year. And so that's all that energy kind of went into that, and continuing I'm hoping it turns into a book. I really do, because the great thing about the research is that straight edge has never been looked at from a historical standpoint.
Right.
People are like psyched on it. You know, it's mentioned in the books, like you get a paragraph or maybe a page, but there's not been a historian that's been like, whoa, like, how does this reflect, like, the Just Say No Reagan drugs era? Like, how does this reflect that suburbia was just saturated with drugs? How does this reflect divorce and alcoholism in the me decade?
How does punk rock, which is such a big counterculture that is pretty much the baby of alcohol, drugs, and that kind of culture, turn into, oh, we're not about any of that, and then we're also going to play louder, faster, angrier music than you've ever even heard. Yeah. So that it's a very interesting piece of work, and a very interesting look at that, to see kind of really, because hardcore was really a rebellion against even punk rock.
Absolutely, and I argue that.
Because then you have the punk rock like Black Flag, which was actually they weren't straight edge. They weren't.
No.
They were whatever you wanted to, right? And then you have the hippies, and then you have the jocks, and then you have the alcoholic dads that are still there. So it's an interesting piece, and I really hope that it grows legs, and really hope that it gets bigger than what it is, and it's an amazing experience. Like, I'm very jealous of you all the way through. So
there's a great picture of me holding Ian MacKay's hand. I can show it to you. Because he's got this hand gesture he does where he kind of like puts it out like he's like kind of bestowing you the gift. And I thought he was going to like go for like, he was going to dap me up. And so he has his hand out like this. And so I go like this, and I end up just kind of escorting him across the library. Like, I'm just kind of grasping his hand like the queen. And it's the most discernible thing. I think Naomi pointed it out first thing. And, you know, I was embarrassed, but who has held Ian MacKay's hand? So, you know, so I have that.
That's great. All right, so where can people find your stuff?
We are on Bandcamp, but we just got on Spotify. We're on Amazon Music, Google Play. I believe it should be on Apple Music anytime, but if you're a Spotify, which you should be, it's on there.
Yeah.
And and look out for us at the DC Black Cat next Wednesday, the 28th, with the Buttertones.
Sidebar on the 31st in Baltimore.
And then we'll be at 5 South April 6th. And from then on, look for some new records and for some new shows, some new merch, and we will see you out there.
Yep. Look us up on MySpace.
All right, cool. That's it.